of things to get. So, right, Mike, before we start gassing, let me check we're on. So this is my major headache, the technology side.
Right. There's a little red thing that come up and does say we are live. And unfortunately live before, I've been looking all afternoon for a soft focus sort of filter. When I spoke to you the other day, I realized that the camera really picks up my wrinkles, but you know, there you go.
Well, I definitely think you're the most prepared person I've had on this show. Like I say, you've got the mic, specific camera. I feel like an amateur, as you've already pointed out, with my horrendous spotlights zoning down over my face.
You haven't seen my notes as well. They're everywhere. They're even stuck on the screen of the Mac. So.
Mike, I would expect nothing less. I've known you for long enough to know that you're a pro. So, firstly, Mike, I'm super excited. One of the best parts about my job is that I get to meet some pretty awesome people, and you are one of them. Me and you have become very good friends since we met all the way back in 2006, which was frightening to discuss because I was 21 years of age, and you were 52.
And you know what? On that point, it's a bit shocking for me, the idea that I would employ a 21-year-old to give me advice at the age of 52. I have to say.
I don't know what you were thinking.
Well, I was thinking at the time. I seem to remember it was at Fitness First, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I think I'd signed up with a personal trainer because I thought I ought to get some proper advice to make some progress, and I'd met this guy and he'd signed up and what have you, and then I turned up and it turned out he'd left. You know, within the period of me going there to me turning up, he'd left. So I kind of just sort of walked in and sort of looked around, and I got a feeling I must have sort of made an announcement in the middle of the gym saying I'm looking for a PT or something, or maybe I spoke to the manager. But anyway, you kind of walked in and said, "Yeah, I got loads of free time." Well, or something like that. I don't know. You probably just started your business. Yeah. So
yeah, I think.
And you know what? That just turns out to be one of those things that happen. That, you know, if you look back, there's all sorts of reasons why it needn't have, but it did. And you're right. We're good friends now, and it's been, you know, sort of quite a journey. And you know, every expectation, I think, when you sign up with a PT is that you'll never really get to know them. They'll spend their time sort of telling you what to do, leaning on the equipment, you know, looking around at you know, some of the other people training, which is quite frankly the total opposite of you. So.
Well, thank you, man. I mean, I didn't actually know that you had an appointment booked with someone else, so that's a pretty cool story. So I'm glad he left, whoever that was. So that's cool. But we spoke the other day, didn't we, about, I think it was a bit of a blessing that I didn't have a clue what I was doing, because when you first started with me, you were in very different condition to what you're in now. You know, in all sorts of areas in your life, right? You were in a different place, and things have changed now. I mean, since the time that we've known each other, I've travelled with you to Denmark, Ibiza, Austria, and sunny Stafford, I think it was, for, you know, to support you in the half Ironman 70.3. We represented Team GB, which we'll come on to talk about. But yeah, when we first met, like I said, my naivety of knowing how to train someone was, I think, a blessing, because I literally threw you under a squat bar and said, "Dude, do some squats, man. I just want to see what you've got." And you learned the hard way about my style of training, because you were put through the mill, man. Like I say, I didn't know what I was doing, and I threw you in. So let's go back to that point of 2006. Let's start there. So let's talk about what was happening for you at that point. You know, what on earth were you doing in a gym in Coventry, hiring a 21-year-old personal trainer?
Well, I think, yeah, okay. So that's probably a good time, if you like, to start, you know, and then to work back and maybe work forward, of course. At that point, I was about 6 years sober, probably 5 and a bit, and sober in the sense that I hadn't had a drink at all in that time. And I think because I'm a recovering alcoholic. It's you know that, and a number of other people do know that. So, but at that time, I was just, I think, getting out of the post alcoholism phase. Now that seems strange because I'd been, sober sort of 5 years, and sort of living a sort of a straightforward life. But it's a weird thing giving up booze when you've done it for such a long time. And it didn't seem very real. I was just getting out of that. And what I mean by that is, when I gave up the booze, I did anyway, still missed the partying, for want of a better description, the people, if you like, that I met and engaged with when I was drinking. So I kind of created that. In my life, and actually, probably spent a lot of time and a lot of money putting on parties and having sort of people round, and they would drink, and I think I would kind of watch them, and it took me a while to settle out of that and start to think about me, and the thing with joining Fitness First was it was the start of that process of putting me in the forefront, so that I could I suppose not heal myself, but make myself strong for what I think was going to be sort of quite a difficult situation. You stand out when you don't drink. I felt I did anyway. It's a personal thing, the thought of this, because most people do, and they do it quite reasonably and ordinarily, but I hadn't. I'd been a drinker for 25 odd years or so, and so it was a good time, and I think I was investing in me. Where I was going to take it, I didn't know for sure, but I liked weight training. I liked resistance weights. And you certainly were an expert at that, I saw at the time. So I gave it a go.
But at the time, I didn't realise I didn't know the whole story. I didn't know what you'd been through. I didn't know much of that. I didn't really ask the right questions. I soon found out in the first session that you weren't in a very good place physically. You struggled to train with the bar. I even noticed you were out getting up the top of the stairs. I remember that thinking, this might not go too well. But again, my naivety just went, let's throw this guy in. Let's see what happens. And you were fucked. Yeah, you were fucked after that first session. So yeah, what condition were you in at that point? At that point in time, how was your health and how was your fitness?
Well, my fitness was really sort of starting point. I'd always weight trained, and I'd been doing sort of some sort of self-starter stuff in gyms, and I enjoyed lifting weights. But after, a few sessions with you, I realized like a lot of people who go out for a bit of a jog, it's not running, it's going out for a bit of a jog, and it might have an impact, but not very much. And my training had been like that. So I wasn't very strong. I certainly didn't have any aerobic capacity at that stage. So I got out of breath. I mean, you said you had me doing squats, and you did. Well, man, that's the one exercise in the gym where you need to gulp in air as fast as you can. And I just couldn't get it in. I'd not been well a couple of years before, never really sort of recovered from that at that time. So, that was kind of sort of one of the things. So I really was, I suppose, at a starting point of, I knew about fitness. I think I knew what it felt like, but I hadn't experienced it for a long time. So I did have a bit of a vision at that time, but I only had a vision to lifting weights, getting strong. Did I want to lose weight? I probably did, but I'd been in my own skin for a long time and never got really lardy. So I sort of managed to sort of sort of suck it in, I suppose, and feel I sort of looked okay. But certainly, bulk up maybe, get a bit of definition and such like. And yeah, so that's where I was.
Yeah, it really was trial and error for me. That was my strategy with you. But what were you doing in commentary? Because you're not a commentary guy. So what brought you to the area at that point?
So part of my journey was I'd literally lived in Leicester for, I think it's 18 years. I'm one of those British people who has lived in Yorkshire, in Scotland, in the West Country, in the Midlands, having started off down in the outskirts of London, which is where I am now, although the other side of London. And I lived in Leicester for a long time, but I just moved to Coventry into into a new relationship. And so that's why I was there. Probably not my first choice of place to move to. It's interesting. It's got three abbeys, isn't it? Or cathedrals. So it's it's got some history and such like. So that's why I was. And I think I'd been at Fitness First in Leicester for a little while, and so I just simply changed gyms.
Cool. So you were 6 years kind of alcohol free when we started. When did that? Firstly, when did you start drinking, and when did you recognise it or flag it up as something that was becoming a problem?
Yeah. Okay. This is probably going to be a long discussion, I suppose.
Go for it. We've got time.
Yeah. Well, of course, like most people, like probably all people, it never starts, does it? It's kind of always there, like any guy sort of getting to his late teens, you'd have drinks with your mates, and I did, and I might have a drink, going out with the lads on a Saturday night, Friday night, but actually I don't recall at that time doing anything other than having a few drinks, and that was it. And that was that sort of for a few years really. Okay, to be fair, at that time, when was it? So we're in the early 70s, and at that time, drugs were on the scene. Again, I suppose just as they are now. People were smoking dope. LSD was a big thing. Acid was a big thing. People would save their Saturday nights for a trip on that. People were doing speed, and that's pretty much it initially. And you know what? I wasn't majorly into it, but I did dabble, and to be fair, I think I'd probably at that time, prefer maybe, having some speed or something like that on a Friday, Saturday night, rather than drinking. The drinking was just a, sort of hydration, so to speak. So, initially, the drinking at that time wasn't an issue at all. Forgive me for sort of looking at some notes. It's just to if you like, just to let you know how I've tried to calibrate this tale. I wrote down all the jobs I've had since I started work. Okay, and I got them up listed here, and then I put the year next to them, and the job. Because during, if you like, my drinking years, they changed more regularly than I would have liked to. They actually enabled me to understand where I was at that particular time. But I think it's fair to say that in my early 20s, that's when I started to regularize drinking. So, and by that I would mean after work, brewing my own wine for a brief period. I would, there would be events. You'd meet with neighbours, or you'd go to parties, or stuff like that. And I think, early 20s, I started to drink to excess at these things. In looking back, I was probably different to other people because, I did want to sort of, neck it down. And later on, in my 20s, I certainly would have had a drink at lunchtime. I got into sales, and so that included hospitality, entertaining, meeting up people that you would sell to, taking them down the pub. It was a big thing in those days. And so during this period, there were regular opportunities to have a drink. You could have one at lunchtime and no one would particularly worry about it, or talk about it. It's very different now. And also, I think a bit later on, I'd be taking the odd afternoon off and meeting up with people who might like a drink. And so there's a couple of things happened. It became more regularized, and I also probably started to need more drink to kind of get to the place that I wanted to be. And I know we're talking, I'm saying my 20s, so a period of about 10 years. But actually, of course, it's a slow thing, and it's an opportunist thing, that you meet people that like a drink, and you go have a drink with them, and you can see them fairly regularly. But also, I noticed during that time, I probably got myself into trouble a few times, in the sense that I just drank too much and did something stupid, and I possibly that's when friends, family, and such like just kind of saw it as I probably even started to be asked, don't drink too much, not, we think you've got a problem. I'm like, it was nothing like that, but it was, try not to get too hammered tonight, or something like that. I would imagine. And yeah. I mean, just some embarrassing things you'd get told about later. The kind of things really that that if you enjoy a drink and you drink, as most people do, as a normal drinker, don't really happen. Sure, one Christmas you fall over a few people, or fall out of on the dance floor, or what have you. But I'm talking just about, just kind of things that were a bit, I don't know, really sort of stupid. Some alarm bells should have said that, you really should have kept yourself in control there, if you were drinking appropriately. And I guess, at that time I wasn't.
Yeah. So, I mean, what was addictive? Was it what you were getting from the alcohol, or was it the alcohol itself? So what you've just described sounds like, like a bad habit would evolve. It starts here, it grows, it grows, it grows. But what do you think was actually the addiction? Was it the alcohol itself? Was it putting a plaster on something? Was it an outlet for something? And when did you really think yourself, regardless of what other people were saying, that you thought, shit, I need, this is something that I'm struggling to stop. I need dependent on this.
We're a way off that yet. We're a way off that.
Yeah.
I mean, just to, if, for anyone listening, just to, I guess, remind them, I stopped drinking on the 27th of October, 2000. All right. And we're talking about the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
So if you like, I'm in the first, decade of 2.5 decades. So at this time it was, I didn't think there was anything giving me the reason to drink, and actually, I'm pretty sure that I would go sometime without a drink. I didn't need to go out and have a drink. I just took all the opportunities there were to have a drink, and I probably at no time would have ever said, look, enough for me. I've got something to do. I probably would have been the last one to say, okay, let's call it a day then. But so that time there weren't any alarm bells particularly, other than, some early signs that I drank inappropriately.
Yeah.
And it's I've got something to say about that a bit later, if you like, as I start preaching, the great, sort of poacher turned gamekeeper bit. But the early days, well, if you like, we talk about, the sort of sport and fitness and things like that. I packed up doing anything by about the age of 23. I ran a bit and then played rugby for a bit. But then kind of stopped altogether. So there was no fitness. Fairly dedicated to family. I like to think, we had some things to do, but clearly, still thinking just about me. Sort of when it mattered.
So when was the first alarm bell for you then? So if there is none at this point, like when did you start to think, well, maybe this isn't what, this isn't normal, or this isn't right, or, maybe this is a sign that I am an alcoholic?
Yeah, right. So again, looking back, because it's I don't know if it's true. Don't forget, I'm only talking about me, and there are sort of many people out there with drink issues that they're dealing with, and their story will be different as you learn when you go through the recovery process.
Yeah.
In going back and thinking through the jobs and what I was doing and where I was traveling and things like that, I think the first, not so much alarm bells, but awareness that I was looking forward to the end of the day where I could switch off work and get a drink, happened in the early 80s. So I'm sort of 27, 28 by that time. Now, at the time, I was changing jobs and we were moving from Yorkshire down to the West Country. So I spent, a few months in hotels during the week. So that was the time in hindsight where there was no one to go, what do you think you're playing at? There were no mobile phones in those days, Alex. So I wouldn't spend the evening as I might do now if I'm away, sort of texting people or WhatsApping people and such like. You kind of were on your own, and if you left the room, the phone was in the room. No one could call you. So, and not that I knew that at the time, but it is probably different now, isn't it? Where you're probably more engaged with your family and friends and everybody else on an hourly basis. In those days, I could go to a hotel, at the end of work, and that would be it. I didn't have a mobile phone, and so I'd go to the bar and have a bottle of wine.
I can really relate to that, though. I can really understand that. I can really understand that. We spoke about this. There's something about a hotel. I don't know what it is. Don't know what it is about the environment. But when I go in a hotel or I stay there for the night, the menu says order burger and chips, and it says have a pint with me as well. There's something about it. There's, like you said, there's not a lot else to do. And if you are saying that, you didn't have your phone, and stuff like that, then it kind of like it's understandable why you would do that.
Yeah. But that's the first time I guess I noticed that I was looking forward to that. I was looking forward to finishing work. I mean, I was doing the job. I wasn't packing it in early so I could get in there, mid-afternoon or something like that. But it was a sort of a nice sort of controlled thing where I get back, get changed, and I could go to the restaurant and have a bottle of wine, or maybe go to the bar. And I don't actually recall. I don't remember drinking in my room at that time. That probably comes a little bit later. But yeah, but it would have been, you know, go to the bar. And at that time, a sort of a decision to drink a higher alcohol, so not a beer, you know, which would have been, I don't know, 3 to 5%, something like that. I'd have been, you know, a bottle of red wine or something. So you're, you know, between 11 and 14. So of course, you know, it hits the spot quicker than that. Yeah, so that's the early signs, I think. Then
is that what you were after then? When you know, did you make the decision to drink the red wine because you knew it would get you to that place quicker, or did you pick red wine because I like red wine better than beer?
Okay, well, some of that and none of that. I think at that time, I think, yeah, the volume, drinking a few pints of beer was probably just, you know, a bit heavy, whereas, you know, a bottle of wine is, I don't know how many pints, a pint and a half or something like that for a bottle of wine. And so it would have been, you know, less to drink. And actually at that time, if I'd had a bottle of wine, I'd probably go back up to the room and not pass out, but certainly sleep or watch television. The choice of drinks and seeking to do something very quickly came a lot later that I remember. So maybe it was just the you know, the subconscious sort of starts of that. I think in those days, like you say, we're sort of early 80s salesman. You can just imagine him, can't you? You know, you had to actually drive the car and park it up next to a phone box and then use your prepaid card to call clients. Anyway, right. So at that time, I don't recall specifically, but I do remember looking forward to that. But it was still fairly, from a time point of view, it was still controlled. I did it in the evening, you know, when a lot of people went out for a drink. So time-wise, I wasn't sitting somewhere drinking at the wrong time of day, very aware of myself, but I was drinking more, and I was drinking on my own.
Yeah, because people will probably be listening to this thinking, well, you know, Mike, that doesn't sound too bad. You know, I like to finish work and, you know, put my feet up and have a glass of wine. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. I think when you say the word alcoholic, well, some people might automatically think, you know, vodka in the flask, you know, pretending you're drinking something else, you know, drink first thing in the morning, drink in the afternoon. Did it ever end up looking like that for you?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, you're going to get there. Yeah. You're going to get there. So, like I say, I've made some notes. I'm just reminding myself. So when I was in my 30s, that would have been the mid 80s is onwards. Okay. And job wise, yeah. So okay. So we were down in the West Country for a couple of years. We had some neighbours who liked to drink, and I could, you know, get out to the Conservative Club with the guy across the road, and sort of drink too much. But when the family were down there, I guess I curtailed being able to just drink a bottle of wine on my own, you know, as I had been doing. But I would still be traveling out of the area and staying in hotels and being able to do that. From there is when we moved to Leicester, change of job, invited to go and join a company up there. And that's when it became fairly systematic and sort of pre-planned and binging. So the company I work for, I ended up becoming the marketing manager. So all of a sudden I've got a budget of you know, £1 million to spend on advertising, on exhibitions, on brochures and things like that. Well, people want your business, so they're going to entertain you, you know, and so I spent you know, time there with people who wanted to take me out and wine and dine me, and that became, I think two things happened. One is I started to drink to excess whenever I could, whenever there was a reason it was okay. But also the controlling of that came in. So it would be okay not to drink one day, and another day, and what have you, and you know, maybe if the gods were favourable, I might get a drink in the evening. But I could organise a couple of days out, seeing, you know, suppliers and clients and things like that, when, you know, the purpose of the, you know, of the meeting that there would be there would be supposedly to discuss some particular aspect of business, but really it was to get to the restaurant and polish off 2 or 3 bottles of wine between 2 people or something like that, you know. And that's when it was clearly, you know, although it was never discussed and never acknowledged, it was just sort of aware that I was a bit of a drinker, you know. But I knew, perhaps more than everyone, you know, that yeah, I wanted to arrange those types of meetings, you know. And it was at that time. I'll give you a couple of examples, I suppose, to the state to which, you know, alcoholics manage things. You know, when it starts becoming important to them, more important than other things, that you get a drink. So I need to talk about me, because I don't want to talk about other people. So, for example, where we lived, down the road, probably about half a mile away, was a newsagent's, a shop, you know, the typical shop which sold booze and sweets and you know, the basic groceries that you need and what have you. And in the evening, I would think up a reason that I needed to go to the shop, and I'd walk down there because it was a nice walk, and hopefully before I left, I'd be able to have a glass of wine, you know, just one glass of wine. When I get down there, I'd buy a bottle, and it would be gone before I got back, and it was only a 10-minute walk. I'd make it 15, but that would happen occasionally, you know, that kind of clearly, you know, excessive, wrong behavior, you know, started to creep in. And then I'd go days without a drink, you know, and it wouldn't be a problem, but I had to arrange other things, you know, to make sure that, you know, those events could happen. And thinking back about them, it just seems so stupid. But you know, at that time, I hadn't realised that I was in the grips of a you know, sort of progressive terminal disease, if you like. At that time, it didn't, you know, it was just, you know, I'm gonna have to drink on my own because no one can keep up with me. So I'm, you know, what I'll do is I'll arrange, you know, for everybody's one, I'll have 2 or 3. You know, you'd go to the bar to get around, and the first thing you'd do is order a drink that you could drink before the rest of the round came, and then you'd order yours. I mean, you know, it's a you know, probably a well-known trick, but that's, you know, this is where I was getting to, you know, in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, and we speak a lot about, you know, the different stages and ages of, you know, a man in their 30s probably at that stage should start to feel like he's, you know, in a decent place, you know, sorting his life out, got rid of that kind of behavior and so on. I'm guessing at this stage you had kids and you had responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I had to do all that. And look, you know, I'm not the victim here. Make that perfectly clear. I'm the perpetrator. There were victims, you know, along the way, and it would be, you know, sort of, I don't know, really inappropriate for them to sort of, yeah, start bringing that up. But it caused a lot of shit. It caused, you know, a lot of shit. But it wasn't all the time. You know, if I look back to the jobs I had, I'll give you some stats in a minute. You know, I've heard it called high functioning alcoholic, whatever that bollocks is. But what I meant was I held down good jobs and I did good work, and I was able to do that, you know, and I also, you know, for the majority of the time was a good family man, you know, and all that works. So, you know, I was able to, you know, sort of provide for the family. I wasn't on the street or anything like that. I was just slowly but surely, yeah, getting worse, I think. I said I'd give you some stats. So just looking at, I can remember these. I had 11 jobs in just over 20 years. So you know, I was averaging 2 years a job. Some were longer than that. And when I look at them, I remember doing a good job everywhere, apart from maybe one or two when I was, you know, not in a good place. But in the end, I got bored, or you know, or I got caught out, or something like that. And it wasn't always, you know, the drink, but you know what it was? It was the mayhem that this stuff does to you. You know what I mean? The idea that you would be long term happy to be, you know, behind the scenes. It kind of, it made me a little bit aggressive at work, I suppose, wanting to get quick results and achieve things fast. And I had some, you know, some good jobs, you know, after I gave up the booze. I've worked for 2 companies, you know, long time, stability, and did all sorts of good stuff. But we'll get to that, I guess. But no, you know, family-wise, I was screwing things up, but not in a way where, you know, there wasn't, I don't know, really, you know, sort of a contribution to the family life.
yeah, I can see like how this would cause an individual some guilt, right? I'm sure that you were probably not proud of what you were doing at that time, therefore feeling guilty, therefore maybe getting into the cycle of, well, you know, I feel guilty, I don't feel good about myself right now. What can make me feel better? Drink.
Yes.
Is that how it works? Is it that's the thing that's destroying you is the thing that's also giving you the comfort?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, I didn't go through any rehab, so I didn't get it. I've not had a chance, other than AA, to discuss what was going on. So actually, I think that's the first time I've ever been asked that question. I felt that the drinking and everything else I was doing was disassociated. I got to the stage now where I was known to drink too much, so my drinking went clandestine. You know, when I was away from home, I'd, you know, maybe be the last to go to bed and drink then, you know. I could down a bottle of wine before I went to bed. All I needed was, you know, sort of 20 minutes. Anyway, yeah. So and so, you know, relationships were failing because I was not to be relied on. and and that type of thing was happening. But at that time, it didn't matter. I was kind of still making excuses for myself. Yeah. So the last few years really ramped up and got a little bit crazy. When I was, I had controlled binging where I'd arrange to drink and go and do that. I actually finally went to AA in, I think it was 1997. So if you remember the date I told you I packed in drinking, October 2000, I was AA 3 years before that. And you know what? I thought when I went, this will sort it, because I absolutely have a problem and I need to fix it. And so I'll go to AA and that'll be, that'll get me sorted. And in the end, it didn't, but I kept going. And I suspect the meetings I went to, they probably knew. And the chances are, I don't know, there are people, in that organization or using that organization that do drink or they, I don't know, they sort of get their batteries recharged from not drinking for a bit. So it was difficult. But yeah, I mean, that last few years, a number of things happened. So I started going to AA, firstly down in the southwest, and then back up in Leicester. In a short period of time, I was sacked 3 times from jobs. I ran up a credit card bill that my mum had to pay off because I, kind of couldn't bring that to the family. Crashed a car a couple of times. Got away with all sorts of things. There were more risks, less control, and it was in my head mayhem. And you know what? You can imagine the damage you do. Look, it's. I'll say it again. So alcoholism, in my view, and if you like, in other people that I've met, is a progressive terminal illness. So it gets worse, just goes on. Some people's getting worse can take 50 years, and some people's can take 6 months, I guess. Mine was getting worse and it was accelerating. And in the end, it'll get you. But before it gets you, as in compromises your health to whatever degree it can, before it does that, it'll take everything away. It'll take your friends, it'll take your money, it'll take your relationships, family, your dignity, and all these things, until it finally gets you, if you let it. And I was in that last period, struggling to control, to stop it affecting everything else that was going on. Okay. And I remember a lot of sadness at that time. And so working on that with half an eye on, I'm trying to give it up, and the other half on how am I going to arrange, my next sort of binge, so to speak. All these things sort of going on, and I, in the last few months before the sort of D-Day, when I had a big event, big to me, big enough to stop drinking. I was going out to the supermarket at lunchtime and getting half a bottle of vodka and a bottle of fresh orange juice and mixing them and taking it back and putting it on the desk at work for the afternoon shift. I was doing that sort of shit, which was just crazy. Just when you look back at it, you know, but I had, can't talk about other people, but I still felt the ability to do my job and operate machinery and all that sort of stuff, which is crazy, in that condition. And so it was creeping in sort of everywhere. What was going on in my head? I suppose it was easier to drink during the day because I had to go home later. And so I'd want to be getting sober and being able to get through the evening. I guess it was that, going on.
You've just referred to, this not just affecting you, but affecting everybody around you, and then kind of starting to attack your own health. So at any stage, did that happen with you? Did you have any health markers that were flagged up, or did you feel any health?
Yeah, actually I did. I must have had a big session at some time, and I remember peeing, and it was so dark. I just thought, my God, what? So I went to the doctors, and they did some tests, and he said, you gave your liver like a shock. You absolutely, whatever you were doing there, you clearly were drinking. Yes, I was. Well, you don't want to do that again. I mean, this thing was like an assault, on your liver. So I clearly, at that particular time affected, my health in a sort of in an event. And I suppose all the time, Alex, I must have been impacting, because it's the liver that gets it, and I know the state of my liver, but my, the impact on my liver sort of is because of the drinking over a long period of time, but also because of something else, which I'll no doubt get to later. And what happens to your liver is it goes through the damage. Initially is called fibrosis, and then after that it moves to cirrhosis. And those two things, don't actually tell you what's happening. But I don't know if you've ever, had a sponge that's been left out and it's gone hard, it's gone solid. In fact, it actually won't soak up water anymore. Anyway, that's what happens to your liver. Your liver gets fibrosis, and the NHS sort of give it a degree of up to 4, and then it starts getting cirrhosis. And cirrhosis is actually the liver dying. It can't function as it's meant to do. It just becomes this sort of solid mass, and everything gets bypassed from the bits. And you can get it to a certain degree. So the chances are, well, fairly certainly during this period, I was having that type of impact. And I talked about a progressive terminal disease. I think if you sort of left alone to my own devices with no one giving me the signals and the reason, to stop drinking, that might have just carried on. Luckily for me, it didn't.
So the doctor, gave you this warning, gave you this telling off. Was that it for you then? Was that you? Right, I'm done.
No, absolutely not. That was. I don't know. You know what? Can't remember. I probably took a few days off, started again. It was. The sobriety was coming by then. I could tell it was probably only a few months away. And you'll hear stories, you'll see it on TV, and you'll talk to people, and people say you have to reach the bottom before you get that choice to climb out or to stay there. And at that time I sensed it was coming. I knew I was in, my thoughts were that, you know, this is ridiculous. You got to stop this, you know. But, you know, maybe next time. Maybe next time. It was that sort of thing, you know.
But you cared, right? You cared enough to want to fix the problem, or do you have the attitude when you're in that place of I just don't give a fuck anymore?
Well, you see, at that time, all you're doing is having a drink. You know, you don't get the, you don't get the impact you're having on your body. You don't get the real damage that you might be doing to, you know, friends and family, of course, family who are in amongst it all the time, you know, who did a terrific job of staying with me and encouraging me when, you know, I think under different circumstances, you know, why would you bother? You know, yeah.
So, Mike, I think it's a good time to ask one of the questions that's come through from Cam. It said, "Did your alcoholism destroy your relationships with your family and friends? And were you aware of the pain they experienced being dragged through the dark side of the journey?"
Yeah, that's of course. The answer to all that is yes. I didn't experience the pain, the anxiety, the sheer frustration, all the things. I didn't experience that because I was the other person. But I know it did happen. I came home one night having a drink, and the whole family were in the house in the living room. You know, and you know, a couple of them had travelled some way to get there because they wanted to know what I was going to do about it. You know, and you know, so they weren't just sort of letting me get on with it. They were asking. And don't forget, you know, 3 years before I stopped drinking, I'd gone to AA. So we, you know, it was all, if you like, out in the open by that time. And I just managed to hide it. Of course, you can't hide it. You think you are, but you're not hiding it. So yeah, I know. I believe I know. You know, the damage I did. And you know what? What am I now? I'm 20 years sober. And so if I think about it, and I think about the ages of my family, you know, the children, then I've clearly been sober longer than I was a drunk. Because I didn't really get into the drink, you know, until sort of later on when you know, until they were a bit older. So you know, I'm hoping that has diluted some of that impact. You know, there's clearly things that you know may never be forgiven, and quite right, but I can't do anything about that. You know, I can only sort of live as I am.
So between 2000 and 2006, so that's, you know, 2006 was when we met and we started training. So there's a big gap there that I know very little about.
What I want to do first, if you don't mind me saying, I do need just to tell you about sobriety and what happened. You know, because it's just such a stupid story, but in the end, it was the thing that tipped me. So I knew I had to give up. So I was comparing at an event in Wales, and so I was driving there on my own, and so I left the house in October 2000, and of course I was free. There was an opportunity for me to do what I wanted. Bought a wine box, put it on the seat next to me in the car. Actually bought plastic glass. Why not? You know, it's convenient, you know. And I would have finished, I think it was 1.5 liters by the time I got to the hotel. bought a bottle of wine, passed out. I was woken up, this time with a mobile phone, of course, by a phone call. And without thinking, I answered the phone. Drunk, slurring, and it, you know, I don't know, what is it? It's like suddenly realizing just what you've done, having indicated to people that you're getting better and that you're stopping drinking and all this sort of thing. You know, you've just, someone opened the door and there you are, stood there, you know, swigging from a, you know, metaphorically, you opened the door. And it was just such a crushing blow that I dealt to my family at that time. And it was that moment I said enough, you know, too late in many ways, but early enough, I suppose, to get things fixed. And I didn't have a drink from that thing, and it was just the shock of the way I would have upset people, you know, having given them some hope. So, and that was it. Never had a drink after that. And I didn't need to go to any rehab or be wound off or be, you know, sort of weaned off it or anything like that. I did have to manage myself. I was volunteering for British Gymnastics at that time. I used to announce at their competitions, and they were great opportunities for me just to have a drink with the people there. And so I stopped staying in the hotels, and I started driving to events and back. So I'd drive to the event early in the morning, get there, do the event, which would finish, I don't know, sort of early evening, and drive home, and then drive back in the morning, just to stop me being in a position where it would be easy to transgress. And it probably wasn't necessary. I decided never to drink again. I knew that, but it was almost like I had to keep reminding myself that was the case. And I had to start telling people, I've got a problem, you know, because most people say, what you having, Mike? Oh, you know, not for me. Oh, come on, just to, you know, and you've got years of doing that before people get it. And so I had to start telling people so that they, you know, didn't just carry on offering me drinks and things like that.
So there's a gap now between the time that you gave up the drink and the time that we met, which is 6 long years. And I know that that wasn't a smooth transition either, right? That was quite a turbulent time, right? Because when we met, you were just recovering from an illness.
Yeah, you know, you think, oh, he's got to the good news bit now. He stopped drinking. It's going to be fine. It's going to be brilliant. And little do you know that it's going to turn to shit again. It turned out that I went for a checkup, and I can't think why at the time. I have to say I can't remember, but it was very soon after I packed up drinking. And the doctor called me back and he said, I'm just a bit concerned about some of the results we're getting from you, ALT level or something. You know, it should be this and it's that. It's one of these numbers thing. It should be 11 and it's 250 or something like that. And so over a period of time, I had a lot of tests done. And it turned out, would you believe, not related to the drinking, but it turned out that I'd got hepatitis C. And I'd have to Google it, and I should have done the research before we came on, but I don't think hepatitis C was known about until the late 90s. Because it started impacting lots of people. And it turned out that it was a form of hepatitis that you caught, but then hung around for 20 to 25 years before it became, effective as a virus. And you picked it up through bloodborne infection. So I would have got this, as a late teenager, maybe early 20s, through intravenous drug use. For a while, the go-to thing to do was heroin, which I did for a while. Not very often, not as most people think. You do it and you've got to keep doing it. It's not true. You can actually be quite selective, so kind of a weekend thing. But I obviously caught an infection through sharing, needles or something like that. And I do recall a time where a lot of my friends went to hospital with hepatitis, but they had like the chronic hepatitis B, I think it was, and I didn't. Lucky boy. Apparently not. Apparently I got hepatitis C, which is this thing that came later. And it was quite a confusing time, because at the moment it was, I met the chief hepatologist from Leicester Royal Infirmary, and he said, "This is new." He says, "We don't know about this. We're not sure about treatment, and we don't know the impact." And in all the specialists I met, I know there was one who said, "I think you got about 5 years." So it was an interesting time. And I mean, look, we're all in awe of the NHS at the moment, because of COVID, quite rightly so. But I've been in awe of the NHS since the early noughties, because these guys put me on a trial for special drugs to try and eradicate the hepatitis C. And they looked after me. They saw me every week. You functioning normally. You had this thing wasn't doing anything to you, apart from the fact it was slowly going to, turn your liver off, and what have you. I think at the time, like I say, not many people had it. Who's that actress in Baywatch? Pamela Anderson. Yeah, I think she came clean, and she'd got it at the time, and we were all saying, "Oh, this doesn't look good." But actually, I went through a course of treatment, with interferon and other things like that, and it, horrible, sort of weekly injections, and it got rid of the disease. But when I stopped the course of treatment, it came back, which was not good. And then a couple of years later, I got a call saying, "We've done a lot of work on this. We now know, what type of interferon to use, how much to give, and this, that, and the other." I guess, like with, other diseases, we know, where they're able to maintain people's health by giving them the right drugs. In the end, I went on another, year's course of these drugs, and they got rid of it altogether, and now it's gone. But during that time, after giving up the booze, I probably deserved it, to be fair, but after giving up the booze, I then spent, on the treatment, at least 12 months taking these drugs, where the side effects were, suicidal thoughts, and things. I mean, I'd get out of breath walking upstairs. I needed to drink water. I remember all the time. I got known as the guy with the water. I mean, I still am, but in those days it wasn't fashionable. So, that was just weird, and I didn't feel good. And I suppose it's like this sort of treatment is like kind of a slow chemotherapy. They're looking to, get rid of the disease inside you by giving you a little bit all the time. And I went on Prozac for a while, because I was just feeling a bit like, wouldn't really matter if I wasn't here. That's where it kind of takes you, not desperate, but it's just a weird, sort of mental impact. I didn't feel depressed. I just felt it would be okay, if I wasn't around. So, they sort of, but anyway, NHS were brilliant. In the end, the pharmaceutical companies and the doctors worked on it, and they came up with something. And now I think it's a disease that they get rid of pretty quickly. But a lot of people weren't so lucky. If you remember the stories about the blood coming over from America, where they hadn't done the requisite testing, and they gave transfusions to people, and people caught, hepatitis C, they caught HIV and all these things, but no one knew about it at that time, and now they do. And now the testing is very rigorous, and I can't donate blood anymore.
When a doctor turns around and says, Mike, you might be looking at 5 years, what happens to your outlook? Do you look back and go, I've really fucked this up? Or do you think, I'm going to fight this as hard as I possibly can? I never know which way I'd tip.
I have to say it was very surreal. Very surreal. Because I remember being in the car park of the hospital and making a phone call or two. I was only left with that diagnosis, if you like, for a couple of months. And the guy that gave it to me, in the end, he did what he thought was accurate. He was a specialist, and it's what he'd been told. But I was then put on a program with another guy who was working with a pharmaceutical company, and he said, let me give you some perspective here. That's not the case. He says, if we can't get rid of it, it's going to do your liver in, and it'll do it in early. And you'll be more susceptible to cancer and things like that. He said, but I'm hoping we'll fix it. And in the end, he did. So it was a bit surreal. You know what? I think with everything that was going on, I was really quite sanguine about it. Just, oh well, fuck it.
Made me feel guilty now. So in session 1, I didn't know any of this. So I just put you through the mill. But as I've already said, I think that was a blessing, because I think if I'd have known what I know now, I'd have been a lot nicer. I'd have been a lot more considerate. And I think the kind of character you are, and it's proved by what you've gone on to achieve, I think it was the best route for us, where we had a few months of hell in that gym. We had to take you from the guy that was recovering from all of this shit, and we literally rebuilt you and created a new man, physically, mentally. It was a tough time, man. It was a tough time.
Yeah, it was. But I had the support of family and friends and you, from a disciplinary point of view. Look, I have to say, 20 years sober, I'd kind of parked all this. When you said, let's have a chat, I had to go back in and revisit it all. And so, it's been quite useful doing this. Just the timeline of jobs to help me understand where I was and what I was doing and why I was able to behave in the way I did, and all these things have been useful. I have to say, this is a bit of a purge, and all these bits of paper that I've written notes on and this, that, and the other are all going to be torn up and put in the bin. I've done 20 years sober. That's how it's going to stay.
Absolutely. Do you remember session 2 when I said, Mike, I want you to do 50 chin-ups? I'm going to time it. I know what I was doing, by the way, and you could do about, I don't know, 3. And yeah, we stayed there for the whole hour, and you grinded them out, and I was like, this guy is made of something else. That's probably the first time where I saw you have that real grind, that real work ethic of Alex. I'm not fucking quitting. I'm going to stay until I've done those 50 chin-ups. It took a whole session.
But it was I'd engage with you. I liked you. You asked me to do something. Why wouldn't I do it? It's as simple as that. Sort of how I see things, really. I'm not great at everything I do, but some things.
Yeah, well, like I said, I think you were my third ever client. So it's been, we've worked together closely since. But within 2-3 months, we started to see some amazing progress, and we started to, like I say, go on and kick on from there. And you actually got into phenomenally good shape, didn't you? You got into awesome shape through weight training only. Like, that's all we did at the time, I believe. Right? I don't think you were running. I don't think you were cycling or swimming. No. We did weights, and you grew like 2 necks, big boulder.
I've got photographs of which I had a look at, because of course you opened your gym fairly soon after we got together, and so I was training over there with you, and we must have spoken about before and after. And you had a 12-week plan. The first guy, I can't remember his name, it'll come to me, but so I was going to take some pictures and what have you, and of course setting it up, I took some of me. I have to say it's a bit scary. I looked a bit Incredible Hulk in those days, which is quite nice, really. But I'm glad I don't have to carry that around, when I run now or cycle. It's just
you're still a big dude for a triathlete. You still look like twice the size from any of the athletes. But what would you say you've learned from? I mean, we'll talk more about the Team GB and triathlon. What have you learned from training? Like, what did you learn from being coached? What did you learn from, transforming the physical body? Because there was a lot of lessons in there, a lot of hard work. What did it teach you mentally? What did it teach you physically? Like, what did that part do for you?
Well, okay. So firstly, it taught me that I don't know shit. If I'm going to train myself, I'd end up doing the 6 same exercises over and over again.
It'll be chest.
I learned about muscle groups. I learned about how they are developed. I learned about different forms of resistance training, be it everything from weights to resistance machines, things like that. I also learned that if I didn't train with you, I was probably good for a 70% session. There's no way that I could, on my own, achieve what I did. I remember, telling people, he gives me 60 seconds rest in between things, and they say, wow, that's all right. And I'm thinking, it's no time at all. When I train on my own, I'd sort of be off to the drinks machine and what have you. What I learned is, I learned that you have to allow the progression. You have to set yourself a goal that where this is going to. You just don't go and train with a guy because something might happen. You actually have to set a goal, and then allow that progression to come through. And the good thing about the training that we were doing, was that actually you could set a goal every session. You could say, that we're going to put 3 extra kilos on that chest press today. You're going to strap a dumbbell, and do 2 pull-ups rather than 5 on your own, and things like that. So every session was a win, but a progression. So you kind of ended up thinking, how did I get here? Kind of look at what I'm doing, but actually I'm stronger, and it's effective strength. It's all, it's every part of you. Walking upstairs is a little bit easier. You've got to move the furniture around, all that sort of stuff, sort of comes along sort of with it. And so I also learned that that I could learn enough information to make me sound like an expert really quickly, when really I didn't know much at all, but I sounded like I did, a bit like I am now, really.
Well, one of the biggest compliments I'll pay you is that I started training with you, which was phenomenal. So I loved training with you. So that's a compliment in itself, because your work ethic was similar to my own. Like, we both like to get stuck in. We both like to train. We both like to have a laugh whilst we were doing it. But we were both there to work, and it worked. It worked really well. And yeah, I mean, what an incredible transformation! Like, from the story that you've just told everybody to getting yourself into fantastic shape. It's just incredible, and it's a credit to your mindset and your attitude. I don't know many people like you, Mike.
Well, I always feel that there are lots of people like me. They just haven't chosen yet to make the most of it. I mean, what am I doing now? Okay, I'm doing the things I probably could have done at school or in my late teens, early 20s. I was, I was in the rugby team, the cricket team, the athletics team at school. I wasn't bad, never the best, but made the school relay team. We won the Middlesex relay. And so I had all that. So actually, kind of then, in my 50s. Crazy as it was, that comes back. The mindset comes back. You were okay at this. You can do this. And I always, I'll say to people, they say, "Oh, that looks so hard," and I say, "Well, were you any good at school? Did you have that about you? Did you enjoy team sports? Did you?" Yeah. Well, you haven't lost it, because if the mindset's there, you can then take it to whatever you're capable of doing.
What if it's not?
Well, if it's not there, then arguably the opportunity is for you to learn the benefit of taking you to places that you wouldn't have thought to going to. Maybe you need different triggers. What do I need to do? I need to lose some weight. I'm getting tired walking up. I need to get some fitness so I can walk the stairs and this, that, and the other without feeling tired. Whatever it is, if there's a reason there, for you to do it, then what I'm saying is that you make progression very quickly in anything that you decide to set your mind to. It's possible for everyone. I mean, what do the NH do? They do this terrific couch to 5K, which quite frankly is just brilliant. It's an app, so you can have sort of, coaching yourself through your mobile phone to get you to run 3 miles. That's old money, 5K in one go, which sounds like, a daunting task. But it's not. It's going to take you a few months to get there, but actually it isn't. And on the way, you running that, you're going to go burn 500 calories, if you do that. And 500 calories, quite frankly, is at least 3 donuts.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's worth it for that, isn't it? Huh?
So look, you were given a nudge, man. You were given some news. You were told that you might have 5 years to live. Like, you pretty much had to change your life, otherwise it would have ended, very, prematurely. I hit a point in my life where, I was given the same kind of message, like, Alex, you need to get your shit together. How do we encourage more men, Mike, who are, let's just say you've got the average dude who's overweight, out of shape, not very happy, but not in enough pain to go and do something drastic like we would do, like change your physique, go couch to 5K. Like, how do we get more men to move who are in that place of just, this is me, this is what I'm always going to get?
And that's a really good question, because I'd lie if I didn't know a couple of people like that, if you like, at the moment.
Yeah.
How do you get people to do it? You know what? I'll tell you this now. If they don't want to, if they can't think of a reason, it ain't going to happen. if they can think of a reason and they want to do it, then you've got a chance, you know. So a lot of people, I would imagine, you know, sit thinking, I really ought to do this. I really ought to, you know, just maybe go out for a jog, or I may go to the gym, or, you know, and you know, because why? Because that's what, you know, people talk about. It's the pressure. It's, you know, all these things. That's not deciding to do it. That is not. That's being influenced that you ought to do something because it's might be a good idea. Jesus, training is hard. It's hard work. It takes you out of your comfort zone. You do things that you know to get fit. That why would you do them? This is just, you know, and so you've got to think of a reason, and you've got to want to do it. Now, personally, my thing would be to set a goal, you know, whatever that goal might be, you know, because that's something I could work towards personally. I'd probably struggle with convincing someone that, well, my dad died in 2015, and he had a number of you know, sort of good things going on, including cancer and diabetes and all these things. And, you know, you know, something will get us all in the end. But you know what? He spent the last sort of 15, 20 years of his life quite sedentary. He watched telly, didn't get up to much. That won't be me. You know, I'll be strong and fit when whatever it is gets me. You know, I'll hopefully still be walking to the crematorium until I sort of, you know, die. But you know, but seriously, you've got to be fit in this life. You know, you've got to be fit for your family. You've got to be fit for your family because you've got to live a long time, and you've probably got a better chance of doing that. You know, if you can hold your own and you don't encourage bad health and those things. So for me, and I might be different than other people. I guess I am in some ways, but you know what? The difference between an unfit guy with little motivation and no reason for doing stuff, and a guy who's focused and doing things, is a decision. That's all it is. I'm going to do it. Because you can talk about it all you like. I talk about all sorts of things, including painting the kitchen door. But it ain't going to get done until I decide to do it. Or I've already worked out that when I do it, it's only going to take me about, you know, 3 days, 3 coats of paint.
I think
I've decided yet to do it.
I think it will get done when Christine tells you to do it, Mike.
Yes. Yeah. She's not giving me the ultimatum yet. It's coming though.
Yeah, it will. I think this is where people get it the wrong way around, though, Mike. I think people wait for the motivation before they set the goal. When you're going to get the motivation from the fact that you're putting in the work to see the progress in getting towards the goal, if that makes sense. So you don't just wake up one day motivated. You know, you have to do the things, do the training, so that it makes you feel in a position of motivation.
Yes, I agree. I agree with you. My sense is, though, is that something is going to make you create the discipline, and that is a decision. I'm going to get this done because I'm not going to put up with it the way you're just carrying on. You know, I'm not happy. It's not working, so I'm going to decide. Now, the minute you decide, I subscribe to the good work you're doing in the sense that you know, I think you said to me, I think you've put it out there. You know, when you don't have motivation, when you've got a discipline. Hell, that's what I've got, discipline. Because you know what? Do I get up every day thinking, I can't wait to go and run that 15K today? I can't go and, you know, I can't wait to go out and ride that 60K. No. I get up and I think, I'll just walk around a little bit more before I put the Lycra on. But the discipline says you're going to do it because you said you're going to do it and someone's told you that's what you've got to do. And you know what? You absolutely know you're going to enjoy it and you're going to feel great afterwards.
Absolutely. So, look, you were in great shape, and then you decided to do this silly thing called running, right?
I
Am I disgust? Not if you can't do cardio, you're going to burn too much muscle, man. You got to stay massive. That was my thing at the time, wasn't it?
I think it was. I think it
Yeah.
was, and I just met some people in a club, triathlon club, and I thought I'll go out and I'll give it a go. God, I think I went out for the first run. I was wearing tracksuit bottoms. Oh God, and it was hard, but I kind of enjoyed the experience, and I decided I was going to keep that up. And I'd be lying if I didn't say that a little bit of boys' toys then got me. Buying a bike is just brilliant. I mean, these things are, just so, technical, and I was working and I was all right. I was earning a bit of cash. And so, I moved from a Boardman metal hybrid to a giant TCR carbon framed beast, which was like getting in a Lotus. It was all of a sudden. So the boys' toys got me as well, and I went out and started sort of cycling, and I enjoyed running and cycling. And then I suddenly thought, if I learn to swim, I've got all three.
You still haven't learned yet, have you?
No, I'm still slow, but hey, you only have to do a little bit, to get it done.
Running is one of those very strange disciplines, isn't it? That the thought of it is not very nice, but when you're in full flow and you gain that fitness, there's very little that can compare to it. Just in a mental health and meditative state, it's a beautiful feeling, because you described it to me and I never really understood what you're on about. And then I started to do 13K, 14K around the block, and I was like, Mike, this is pretty awesome. It's freeing, very freeing.
Yeah. No, I agree. Running, look, let's not kid ourselves. When you first start running, it's hard work. You're putting pressure on your body, your joints, and things like that. But actually, the fitness, comes relatively quickly. God, we've got loads of time. What's 3 months getting fit? Through a proper program. It's nothing, is it? You wouldn't think you'd book a holiday in September and look forward to it, wouldn't you? Well, by that time you'd be out. You'd have run 10K in a decent time. So it's and it doesn't take very long either, does it? All right, you've got to put some clothes on, you've got to have a shower afterwards. But actually, to get out for half an hour is only half an hour. Yeah. And so, and there's an interesting thing in running, having learned, if you like, the science of how it works. They talk about breathing zones, and the relationship to what energy is being burnt in these zones, and it's the balance between fat and carbohydrate, would you believe? And I learned this sort of fairly quickly, because actually when I started running in 3 months, I lost a stone and a half, and I didn't think I had it to lose. But I had this layer of fat, and the good thing is, I went out running and I ran at a pace where my body used that fat for the energy. So basically, without getting too much into the science, if you run not very fast, you don't get really out of breath. You run at a pace where you could probably hold a conversation with somebody. You might have to take a breath in the middle of a long sentence, but they kind of call that zone 2, and that's where the most body fat is being burnt. And so running, on a sort of a jog or a bit more of a jog, is fantastic for weight loss in that way. You've just got to make sure you run long enough. The minute you start sprinting or going faster or trying to race, your body can't metabolize fat quickly enough, so it needs carbohydrate. And so it's then taking your breakfast or your lunch or whatever's in your stomach, and it's grabbing that as quickly as it can. And you'll know also that because you see it on television, people take energy bars and gels and things like that because actually they don't have body fat because they're probably athletes and they've got no body fat at all. So they actually need to feed on long events. They need to feed themselves to make sure that they don't, they used to call it hit the wall, and that's where your body can't get any energy for the amount of effort that you want to put in it. And it's a whole, sort of science. We get onto racing, nutrition during the race is a really important thing for me.
So, Mike, you find yourself in Lycra and a helmet doing your first triathlon in what
Antwerp.
Year?
Antwerp in 2012. It was 2012, and it was actually the month before I was the announcer at the 2012 Olympics gymnastics at the O2. Speaking to my crowd of 13,000 people. Yeah. Anyway, a month before that, I went to Antwerp and did a race there, and that was the first one.
Wow, I didn't realise that was your first. I thought we started local and then you branched out, but no, straight to Antwerp.
Yeah, and I'm not quite sure why. I think I got fairly early on that if you're going to train a lot and train hard, you're going to really put the effort in, and then you're going to go out and do a race that's going to take you between 5.5 and 6.5 hours. Why do it in Watford? I mean, it's a day trip.
Yeah.
I mean, I have done races in the UK, of course. We did one in Stafford, as you said, and I've done them up at Eton Dorney, and I've done one in the Cotswolds. But the majority of the middle distance triathlons that I do, I've done, overseas. You mentioned Austria, Denmark, Ibiza, done them in Norway, Miami, and actually it's then a bit of an event, isn't it? Because Christine will come with me, and she loves every moment of it.
Yeah, and I'll tag along.
And on occasions you do.
Yeah.
And so I think that's important that if you're going to go and do an event, make it an event.
It's great, man. You get to see some countries as well as do something incredible. But Mike, it's quite a common theme. Some of the people that I follow and inspire me are also have had problems with alcohol and drug use, and they often get into events like IronMan, triathlon, and really testing, grueling events that require the best of you. Do you think there's a mindset in an alcoholic that is so all in that they have to go all in on something else to replace that? Do you think they just have energy and dedication to something?
I think I'd be a psychologist if I knew that, Alex. I don't know. Is it for me? I don't compare what I do now with the effort I put into my alcoholism. That's for sure. What freeing myself of all that crap has just enabled me to be what I was when I was younger. I think, a guy who likes sport, as simple as that, really. I enjoy photography, and I enjoy the precision that has, and the decisions that you have to make and such like to create a good photograph, and then the editing and everything. And actually sport gives me that as well, because I meet experts. I meet, yourself. I've got a tri coach, of course. I've met people who understand nutrition very well, sports masseurs who understand, what's going on where and what's going wrong. And the race I do, the middle distance triathlon, is a long event. It's also quite technical, in the sense that, I wear a wetsuit to swim because it's usually in a lake or in the sea, It's not up and down in a swimming pool, and it's never warm enough to not do that. So and then when you come out of the water, you've actually got to change and get on a bike and then go and pedal that for nearly 3 hours. And so it's technical. You've got a Garmin to watch and measure to see where you are. You've got nutrition to take sometimes when you're not hungry, because otherwise you're going to blow up at the end. And I quite like that technical aspect of what I'm doing as well. It's triathlon is an interesting race. I quite like watching the Olympic triathlon, but that would be too short for me. They do 1,500 meters swim, then they do 40k on the bike, and then they run a 10k, and that's a sprint, man. The ones I've done, I've managed to do it in a little over kind of 2 hours. But the middle distance triathlon is great. I mean, I got to swim 1.9 kilometers, so I'm in that water for 40 minutes, thinking my own thoughts, so to speak. And then you get on the bike, and I've got to do 90k. And so, if I'm lucky, it's flat, and I can just get on a TT bike and go like, these professional cyclists do, Bradley Wiggins and the like on the time trial. But sometimes they put hills in the way, so you've got to, sort of get out of it and climb up and down. And then when you get back, you've got to go run a half marathon. And so, it's a long event. You've got plenty of time for thinking, plenty to go wrong that hope your training sorts out, and your planning and all these things. No?
Well, yeah. I mean, I try not to have too many regrets in life, but one of them was saying to you, Mike, do you want to go out for a cycle one day? Because I just started to get into, I was doing a challenge, Mike, where I was cycling from Warwick to Snowdon, climb up, climb and stuff back. And I'd never been out on a bike. And you said, yeah, I'll take you for a short ride. I don't know where I ended up. It was somewhere across the other side of the country. Absolutely destroyed. It was horrendous, man. Hitting those hills is no joke. You've got to know when to change gear. You've got to be able to grit your teeth and grind it out. It's a real art, and I think I learned the hard way. So yeah, I kind of had a lot more respect for what you did, because it sounds quite pleasant, Mike. Go out on the bike. I mean, it sounds like a silly day. Get the bikes out. When in fact, when you're competing at that level, it's a tough shift.
Well, you know what? Let's be clear. I'm okay on the bike. Arguably, sort of quite average. I think the more effort you put in, the more you get it. But it's hard. It is hard. And there's some terrific cyclists I meet all the time. Guys that just, it's a pity I got into it so late, arguably, because I think with cyclists, sometimes you kind of, it's in your legs. You put a decade of hard work in your 20s and what have you, and you keep it all your life. You just sort of can do that stuff. But you know what? I'm on the bike, and I remember that day out. And we went on the Foss Way. Because it was nice and straight. You weren't nothing too technical. Trust me, the Romans built a straight road. Unfortunately, they also made it a little bit hilly, and I do recall having to wait for you at the top of most of the hills.
I liked down the hill. That was fine. But going up it was the part I didn't like it for. It was horrendous. But anyway, Mark, you got involved in the triathlons, and then all of a sudden you get an email, a call from Team GB saying,
right. Yeah. So I mean, this is the good thing about sport in Britain, and maybe arguably sport in the world, and that is that if you want to be competitive at any age and in any sport, the chances are there is a category for you to do it. Okay, so I'm a member of the Great Britain age group triathlon, middle distance triathlon team. Okay. So, and to do that, you've got to meet the selection criteria. So you've got to compete in a race that is the distance that you might be selected for, and you've got to be you've got to be close enough to the winner of that race to be deemed to be good enough to represent the country. Okay. And it's funny, I got a tri coach called Dermot, and he said to me a couple of years into our sort of coach protege relationship, he said, "You do know, Mike, that the older you get and the further you do a triathlon, the less competition there is." And I hadn't thought about it that way, and it's true. So I'm currently in the 65 to 69 age group. That's the age group that I compete at. So even though I might be in a race and there'll be 20 somethings and 40 somethings and this, that, and the other, and male and female, the whole lot, and we all go off, I'm actually competing against those people in the 65 to 69 age group. And that's how sport works mostly in this country, so you can actually in the end compare yourself to your peer group in terms of age and what have you. Okay, so I was fortunate enough that I competed in a race and I met the criteria, and you're right, I got an email saying, "Congratulations, you have been selected." And the first one I did was in Austria in 2016, I think it is, a place called Waldsee, which is where I should be going at the end of June for the European Championships this year. So I've made European Championships with the British team in Austria, and then we did it in Denmark, and then we did it in Ibiza, and I was selected for Romania, and we went, but I was injured, which was a real bugger. And of course, last year was cancelled. But I have to say, the 40 something, if you like, let's call it the 40 to 44 year age group, the competition to get into that squad is huge. There are so many people that age. At my age group, I'm not saying it's easy, because it's not, and you've got to be in it to win it, but there's a much greater chance with the work that I am doing that I'm going to be, good enough, as I've, sort of have for the last few years, to be selected. And sometimes it's a bit touch and go. You've got to meet the qualification criteria, to be considered for selection. But if you do it, it's great. It's just absolutely terrific. You can imagine all turning up at the venue, and sort of a couple of hundred people there are all dressed like you. You realise you're in the same team, and Great Britain win loads of medals at middle distance triathlon. I mean, my best result in the European Championships is 11th. Quite frankly, I'll take that.
Yeah, no, it's brought us some amazing experiences as well. I mean, it's probably the biggest achievement I've had with a client. When we hear about your journey to go from the situation you were in to representing Team GB, and I love wearing my Team GB kit. You know why? Because I like to pretend that I'm a team. I love nothing more, Mike, than go to the airport with my Team GB top on, and the air hostess is saying, "Are you from Team GB?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they go, "You compete in everything." Yeah, I do a bit of everything. Yeah, Zalmzee. I mean, I've seen some great places. Zalmzee was my favourite in Austria when we came into Austria. Me and Christine had an afternoon in the pub whilst you were out on the
did.
Rock. Yeah, so I think we missed you.
You did. You did. You missed my first lap of the run. Yeah, but you know what? That's fine. That's fine. I don't blame you. I have to say, usually when I'm on the run, I'm promising myself that I never have to enter another race in my life if I just finish this one. Yeah. So, that's what it takes.
Do you have that, like, this is my last go. This is so tough. This is so demanding. It's asked so much of me. I'm probably gonna leave it after this. Is that the kind of feeling that you have going through your head after?
You know what, Alex, honestly, on occasions, yes, some races are easier than others. If you consider, I suppose, a triathlon, it's course specific, you know, because, you know, all right, the water's always flat, trust me, but sometimes it's flowing. You know, when I swim in the Danube in one direction and come back the other, in one direction it's easy, in the other direction it's hard. And on the bike, invariably, if it's a bit hilly, so some courses, you know, are much tougher than others. And getting off that bike when you've just, you know, sort of gone out and climbed a mountain or two in your mind, you know, and you're absolutely knackered saying, I've only got to run 21k now. Why would I do it? You know, and absolutely. And then sometimes it's hot and sometimes it's cold, mostly hot. You're right. There are times where I just sort of say, you know, just finish this. And you don't have to do the race you've already entered and paid for. You know, you're allowed just to take the rest of the year off. And that lasts usually for about 10 minutes after you finish, before you're already planning.
Especially when you have a few injuries and such. And you've come off your bike a couple of times. You've had some pretty heavy knocks as well during the years, right? Like I remember one that was quite bad where you came off your bike and landed on your shoulder. You know, but yeah, you like the fear of the bike, don't you? When you're going downhill fast, you thrive in that.
Absolutely. I have to say, I'd much rather go downhill than uphill, that's for sure. And you can get up to speeds. I mean, you know, you're doing 65 kilometers an hour. I mean, you know, you're tanking on. It feels really fast, really, really quite exciting. The strength work I did with you, though, has saved me a couple of times on the bike coming off, because, you know, the important thing, of course, is to make sure the bike doesn't get damaged. So you're more as you grind, you know, as you're sliding along the thing, along the tarmac or whatever it is, holding the bike up in the air so it doesn't get damaged is most important. You know, but as long as you've got a shoulder to land on and not your elbow and stuff like that, you know, and yeah, the strength work's been really important in triathlon.
Yeah, I was always a bit nervous when you're out on the bike. Like, the swim is the swim. Like, I think you'll be okay. Like, you know, the run is the run. If you're injured, you pull up. But, you know, there was people coming off their bikes, like you say, at speed, requiring, you know, ambulances. And, you know, sometimes, you know, people have lost their lives on bicycles, you know, in events and just on road racing. So it's a dangerous sport as well. And I think that's something that, because your mindset is quite strong, it actually plays to your advantage, because we all know that when you're on the bike, you start to creep up the ladder, don't you? You start to take over people and kind of catch up from the fact that the swim might not.
I tell you what, Alex, one of the best bike legs I've done was the last race I did. I did a race in Amsterdam, Challenge Almere, you know, just outside Amsterdam. And I got a 4th place, which wasn't bad. I was 6 minutes off third, which was disappointing. But of course, it's Holland, so it's flat. So all you've got to worry about is it windy? Because, you know, if it's windy and you're riding along the dike, you're screwed. But this was not windy either. Now, because I'm not the fastest swimmer in the world, I'm okay, but I'm not the fastest. I hung around and didn't go in. And so when I came out of the swim, you know, people were in front of me. I overtook 200 people on that bike ride. I cycled at an average of over 20 miles an hour, which for me isn't bad, you know, and I got a TT bike, so you're in the tuck position all the time. And you know what? It was like every 50 meters, there's another one. Brilliant. I mean, it was like being a sort of a champion, you know, under different circumstances, of course. You know, you're being overtaken by everybody else on the second lap when they, you know, they're already half an hour ahead of you. But, you know, that's life, I guess.
Yeah, man. It's amazing seeing the medals in the background. Like I say, you're one. You know, I don't have many friends, but you're one of the guys that I would consider a good friend, and definitely one of the people that I respect the most. And I think it's because, well, no, I don't think, I know it's because of everything that you've been through, and because you've made such a transformation. I'm always drawn to men that are able to get through the battle. I think it's far more appealing. we've become good friends through it. I talk to you about things, and you guide me and mentor me, which is great to have somebody like you in my life. So it's been an epic journey. I mean, what a guy. And one of the things we often speak about, and we'll wrap up in a minute, but is this dealing with the mistakes that you make in life? Like, how have you found this, Mike, when you look back and think, fuck, I could have done so much better, or I let so many people down, or things didn't work out, or I didn't get my shit together until I was in my 50s? Like, how do you deal with all that stuff as a guy who's seen so much success recently?
You know what, Alex? I hope that as each year goes by, that I might now have done enough so that people think of what I do now and not what I did then.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things, probably the main thing. My mind goes back and I embarrass myself in my head, and I I think, shit, all that sort of stuff. So it's all about, if you keep being good, being a good role model, doing good things to the best of your ability, and all these things, then I'm hoping that, in the end, that will be what people will think about. And I don't mean that in a selfish way. It's just that, the people I care about don't deserve, what they got from me. And so the more I can make that a distant memory, the more important it is.
And the forgiveness of the self, forgetting everybody else. How did you manage to, or have you managed to get to that point now where you say, I forgive myself for everything that I do?
No. Kind of can't do that. Like I say, for me, it's about the balance. Have I now created enough good to outweigh, the rest of it? And because virtually every day I have now is brilliant, everything's good, then I guess it must be so. Doesn't stop me on occasions thinking about that stuff. And sometimes, I have to remind myself and tell other people where I am with this, and so, when I got to 20 years last October, I did kind of go public in that way, just because, people need to know that it still matters.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, thank you for sharing your story. Like I said, I was excited tonight. I'm honoured. Feel a bit emotional actually now, just talking about that bit at the end. But yeah, we've done some cool things together, and was it your wedding? And little things like that to be involved in those, big times in your life has been pretty epic. So I'm going to give you the last words. I think we've covered everything that we wanted to cover, right? We could probably speak for hours.
Yeah, I was going to get into nutritional breakdown of races and all that sort of stuff, and I never told you about the tattoo story. But apart from all that, yeah, I think we nailed most of it. Yeah.
Well, thank you. You're a very brave guy, and hopefully we can have some more races together, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, look forward to it, Alex. Thanks a lot.
Mike Moore, you're a legend. Cheers, man.
Cheers.